Welcome to Ottawa Experts. I'm your host, Barbara Balfour. For many of us, being online is no longer professionally or socially optional. If we really want to put ourselves out there and connect with other people, especially in our new COVID world, we have no other choice but to go online or risk being in complete isolation from the rest of the world. Thanks to Zoom and other video conferencing platforms, we can share personal space with strangers or colleagues at the flick of a switch. But that screen can often trick our minds into thinking that our interactions online aren't real or as valuable or that they don't have real world consequences. If you think about it, initiating a remote conversation is so much easier compared to the expense of taking a business trip or even your daily commute. So, in this crazy COVID world where so much of our lives has moved online, how do you want to occupy that space? How do you treat social media as an authentic extension of yourself rather than just an ad for yourself? And how can you create a space in which to not just exist, but thrive, and where you can make real, genuine connections with a mutual interest in supporting each other? Well, tonight's panel of guests are going to share their wisdom and expertise on how you can best navigate this new digital world and present your best self online without burning out. First, I'm so pleased to welcome Chanel McFarlane. Chanel is a multiple award-winning certified career strategist and a TEDx speaker. As the founder of her career advice website, Do Well, Dress Well, she has built an international audience around her approachable and practical advice on personal branding and career strategy. Chanel has been recognized as one of Canada's top 30 under 30, one of the top 100 Black women to watch in Canada, and one of the top 25 women of influence. Welcome to the show, Chanel.
Thank you, Barbara.
Next, I'm thrilled to introduce Canada's PR queen, Natasha Kaufman. Natasha is the founder and president of NKPR, which she created in 2002 to combine her two passions, sharing stories of substance and championing important causes. She's been recognized as one of Canada's most powerful and innovative women in public relations and has been honored with numerous awards from the Women's Executive Network and many other organizations. Natasha is also a TEDx speaker, and she's a regular commentator on public relations, marketing, pop culture, and other topics. And she currently divides her time between Toronto and New York City. Thank you so much for joining us, Natasha.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, I want to hear from both of you how you got started on this journey to what you do for a living and how the increasing push towards putting everything online has affected your career. First, Chanel, let's start with you because I know you started your personal brand pretty much exclusively within an online context. Tell us how you got started and how your business has evolved till today.
Absolutely. Well, my journey really begins with a blog. I wanted to have this creative outlet outside of work where I could write and build a community. And so I decided, you know what, it's time for me to start this blog. But I actually sat on it for a number of years. I mean, I know it can be a little intimidating to put yourself out there, but thankfully in 2016, I finally hit publish. And it now continues to be one of the best decisions that I've made in my career. I've been able to get some incredible job opportunities. I have, a great network. I sit on a number of boards to support some great organizations. But most notably, I've been able to become a public speaker. And that's been a huge life change for me because I am an introvert. And so to be able to say that now I went from someone that would avoid public speaking to now being on a TEDx stage, it truly was transformational. So I'm definitely someone that can attest to the power of really putting yourself online.
I want to hear more about the introvert angle because I know all three of us have described ourselves as introverts. But first, Natasha, I want to hear about what kind of pivots you've had to make since starting your career. I mean, you've been around for a while, and back in 2002, the internet wasn't as prolific as it is today. I'm curious to know how moving online has impacted what you do and your relationships with clients. I know your agency was one of the first to be verified on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Why has this been an important feature? Talk to us a little bit about that.
I mean, it's interesting. In 2002, just to paint a picture, people were still using the little pink note cards like for messages, right? So email was just starting to become a thing. Instagram didn't actually even hit until about 2010. So Instagram, it used to be that we would I guess the difference between 2002 and going into 2010, we had an opportunity to reach more people. Instagram gave us the opportunity to do that. It gave us the opportunity to be able to showcase our work, but also showcase our personality at the same time. I remember starting my Twitter account and the Instagram account, not fully understanding the power of what it was going to be and where it was going to go. And I remember the reason my name on Instagram is Natasha NKPR is because at the time NKPR was taken and Natasha was taken, and so I thought I'd combine the two. And it turned out to actually be one of the smartest decisions I made, because what that tells the people that go on our feed is that my business is very much grounded in my own personal values. And so people know that if they're going to contact us at NKPR, they understand that the person and the business are the same. And that was always really important for me. And I remember over the years, we would hire like digital managers or directors of digital. And I remember one person in particular, it was around 2012, maybe 2013, she said, I really think you need to have a separate business account and separate personal account. And I felt really strongly that I didn't want to do that, because I feel like my business is very much grounded in my values. Even though we have a staff of over 30, we do work across North America, not just in Canada. The values are the same. And so for me, social media has given myself and the company an opportunity to make sure that we are grounded in our values. So you see a lot of the cause work that we do, certainly a lot of the work that we do with our clients as well. But I think who you are as a human and what you do in business should be the same.
Now, Natasha, I watched your wonderful TED Talk, and you talked a lot about how you were and continue to be shy, even though some people don't believe you. And I'm in the same boat. I've described myself as an introvert as well. And I'm just wondering, so much of public relations is networking, is schmoozing, is going out and being around people. And I'm wondering what your perspective is on what kinds of opportunities going online has presented to you that, might have been out of reach if you were at a point where you just couldn't do one more cocktail party and you don't particularly enjoy passing around business cards. Has this push towards going online, and even more so this year, been more of a blessing?
It really has. I'm an introvert that lives the life of an extrovert. And I often, and both of you can, I think, agree to this and understand it really well. Just because you're an introvert doesn't mean that you can't do all the things an extrovert does. It just means that you receive your energy differently and you deplete your energy differently. So for me, online is awesome because I feel like I have this opportunity to actually engage with a lot of different people, and it doesn't deplete my energy in the same way. Whereas if I go into a room with 300 people, what I try and do is I hone in on like one or two or three people and actually have a proper conversation, as opposed to doing small talk with a lot of people. And then I do find that after an evening like that, I come home and my energy is pretty depleted. So I can't do 2 nights in a row of that because I'm just mentally and emotionally drained from it. So digital media has given me, has afforded me the opportunity and the privilege to actually build a community of people and not feel the same form of depletion. But I wonder if you guys find this. I will say that sometimes, like on a weekend, I'll just have to put my phone down and not look at it. And because I do need sort of that mental disconnect. And I will do that. And you have to know yourself really well to know when you're ready for that. But then when I want, that stimulation, I can go back online and get it. So it's interesting. I think the key with being an introvert and an extrovert is you have to know yourself, because I'm sure you guys probably felt the same thing. I remember being in my early 20s and just thinking, I just don't like to go out. I thought I was antisocial. I wasn't quite sure what was going on. And then right?
Absolutely.
And then I realized when I was getting older, that wasn't the case.
I
Chanel, I'd love
completely
to
agree
hear.
with that. Absolutely. I mean, I'm not here nodding my head. I'm like, yes, that is so me. I relate to that. I'm also as well an introvert that lives a life of an extrovert. And when I tell people that, they're like, You've done a TED talk. You speak all the time. How could you be an introvert?" But it's like what you said, Natasha. I deplete my energy differently. And so yes, I can go on a stage and then I'll come home and I want to just curl up with a book and I don't want to be around anybody. But for me, that was why I started my blog in the first place, is because I was an introvert and I thought, okay, I like blogging, I like being able to interact with people and expressing my thoughts, but I can just hide behind the screen, right? And then once I started writing and people liked what I had to say, they were like, "Well, hey, why don't you come and speak at our event?" And I was like, "No, I don't think so. That's not for me. I'm an introvert." But I can say it's possible to overcome that, right? And so it's that practice makes perfect. As you start to do it over and over, you start to feel more comfortable with that. And that's really what happened in my case. In the beginning, I was terrified, but now I can say that I've actually started to enjoy it, but I'm still very much an introvert. So it's interesting how that happens, but it's possible to overcome.
The key
Chanel, do
is you
you
have
get
to learn about yourself, right? Like you have
Yes,
to know yourself. And so it's
yes,
that discovery, of learning what actually matters to you and
hmm,
what what depletes your energy, or where you get your energy from, that will make the
exactly,
biggest difference, and not let
exactly.
any of those things actually stand in your way from doing
Hmm.
what needs to be done.
Exactly. And I
Natasha?
find it's the passion that's important as well, right? Like once you're really passionate about something, you almost forget that you're nervous. And that was really the case with me. I love talking about personal branding and careers. And so once I'm on, I'm like, oh, I forgot I was even scared in the first place, right? So passion is key.
Natasha, do you get Zoom fatigue these days?
I definitely get Zoom fatigue. I try, if it's a call with two people, I try and do it as a phone call and not Zoom. I think the challenge with Zoom, even though there are certainly so many benefits, I think the challenge is you focus differently because you're still looking at yourself and you can't quite gauge tone and you're distracted. And so the amount of
Mhm.
energy that I feel Zoom takes up is quite different than just doing a phone call. And I just think there's a lot of Zoom right now. Like, I mean, on one hand, there's this efficiency around Zoom, right? You're not traveling, or I mean, you can't travel, but you're not even traveling to a meeting. So you can do a lot more meetings. So it's good from that standpoint. But by the end of the day, I actually feel that's where I am depleted. Whereas a phone call I could do, and I don't get depleted
Yeah.
of energy in the same way. But with Zoom, I feel like it's like a human interaction, and I really am exhausted by the end of the day.
We're just about to go to break now, but when we come back, I want to hear more from both of you on strategies on how to make that Zoom call or meeting more efficient and more fun, and how to navigate this world without burning out. So, more on that after we return from the break.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Hi, I'm Daniela Croco, and I'm a holistic chef. I take traditional and classic recipes and turn them into nutrient-dense, delicious, and simple eats. I love to focus on using ingredients that you already have on hand. This helps reduce waste in the kitchen and also helps save money on groceries. Join us every week for Simply Cooking by Chef right here on Rogers TV.
Where did she come from? She's just like and white. She told me everything is gonna be alright.
Each week on Grill This, Smoke That, Steph Legary showcases delicious recipes from across Canada, all done on the grill. Join Steph and his special guests on Grill This, Smoke That, Fridays on Rogers TV.
Hi, welcome back to Ottawa Experts. I'm your host, Barbara Balfour. From meetings and job interviews to business pitches and presentations, even happy hours, they're all migrating to the internet, at least until we can beat COVID-19 into submission. Now more than ever, with people working from home and social distancing in full force, you need to be prepared to present your best self through that small little screen. Here to get you ready for your close-up are very special guests, Chanel McFarlane and Natasha Kaufman. Now, while we were chatting during the break, Natasha, you mentioned something very interesting in that sometimes people approach you and they express fears or anxiety that they may not be well suited for certain careers because they tend to be more introverted. And your take on that is that this is not the case.
No, I think the key is really getting to know yourself and understanding where you get your energy from. I think someone that is shy can definitely be in PR. I think someone that is shy can do a TED Talk. I just think that you have to maybe prepare differently than someone else and understand that you might not be someone, in our industry that can go out every single day and be social, but you are someone that can foster really strong relationships with people, because introverts are very good at one-on-one relationships, not necessarily they don't necessarily enjoy large crowds. So it's just understanding what your strengths are. And how do you make sure that you're amplifying those as much as possible?
Now, Chanel, I'm curious to hear your take on this. Do you see our new primarily online lives as having the potential to be as satisfying as what we had in the past? Or do you think it's just sort of a temporary placeholder for the real thing? And, do you see the real thing to be sort of the face-to-face and all five senses engaged? Like, do you miss the in-person aspect?
I do. I have to say, I really do miss in person. I mean, there's nothing like being able to interact with someone, especially like myself that's a speaker. I used to love those moments afterwards where you could interact with people in the audience, get to know them. And it's a little different when you're speaking through the screen. But I mean, as long as COVID-19 is around, I feel like we have to get used to showcasing our personality through these small little squares. And so it's all about just the preparation, right? There's a lot more work that goes into it. But I feel like it can start to feel satisfying, but probably not as satisfying, I should say, as being in person.
Now, speaking of preparation, and you've obviously prepared very well today, you've curated your space, your background is beautiful. Talk to us a little bit about, what people need to know to make a Zoom call a better experience for everyone involved. I mean, I think from what I've seen, most people just sort of, plonk their computer on a desk or some flat surface and they just hit join meeting and they don't really think about what's involved, but it's actually kind of an art form. Talk us through it.
Absolutely. Well, I like to see it as being on a movie set, right? So on a movie set, you'd have your decor, you'd have your audio, you'd have your lighting, you have your cameras. All of those things are part of having a really great Zoom call. And so I actually have a number of different tools and tech that you can use to ensure that you are upgrading your calls and you're presenting your best self. So the first tool I'd say is a webcam. And I know that a lot of our laptops these days, they come built in with a webcam, but you may have noticed they're probably not the best quality. And so I actually recommend getting a separate webcam that you can just plop right on top of your laptop. The one that I use, the Logitech C922 Pro Stream, and it just gives you a really crisp, high quality image so that you actually stand out on screen, and you can get that from a Best Buy or any sort of tech store.
How much does it cost? You sent us a picture of it that we'll just pull that up online while we're chatting, but how much do you invest in something like that?
Just over $100. I mean, there's a number of different ones that are out there, but you usually find them between $100 and $200.
Okay, and then how would you plug it into your computer?
Yes, so you plug that in just through your USB, and it's very simple. As soon as you plug that in, you're ready to go. And then once you go onto Zoom, you're able to select your webcam. And again, that just gives you that much more crisp, high quality looking image.
I love that. And there's a couple of other
looks so great.
Thank you, Natasha.
You're welcome.
There's a couple of other accessories that you were talking to us about. Let's go into those as well. I know there was a laptop
Yes,
stand, ring
absolutely.
light,
Yeah.
those.
Yes. My favorite is lighting, right? And so, of course, there's natural light. So if it's a bright day, you can just ensure that you had the lighting actually behind your laptop instead of behind you, because that way you don't have that sort of dark shadow that you can get sometimes. But for
You're in the
example, if
witness
it's
protection program.
Exactly, Barbara. So, for example, if it's night outside, or you don't have access to a window, or you just want to upgrade, a ring light is a really great option. And so, again, you just place that right behind your laptop, and it actually comes with a number of different settings. So you can adjust that brightness. You plug it in typically through USB as well, and then you're ready to go. You just brighten up your space really nicely. So that's why I really like that. But a lot of them also come with a cell phone attachment. So if you're not on Zoom, but maybe you have a live stream on your phone for maybe Facebook or Instagram, or you just want to take a really awesome selfie, you just add on your cell phone there, and then you have that really nice natural lighting.
And a laptop stand, you also like that as well.
Yes, I do love a laptop stand. And again, just to prop it up, you just have that at eye level so that you're looking right into the camera. And of course, you just want to make sure that you're centered in your frame as well.
Now, you mentioned Best Buy is a great place for that extra webcam to clip on top of the computer, but the ring light, the laptop stand, do you have a preferred place to source those
Yeah,
items
well,
from?
nowadays, because we're all on Zoom calls, I mean, I feel like you can get them anywhere. So, of course, Best Buy is a really great place. You also have Walmart. I've seen them as well. And then also Amazon, you're able to order those items.
Okay, great. So that really gets us into sort of the technical aspects of it. And I know, Natasha,
Yeah.
you had some tips as well on getting yourself prepared for a great Zoom call.
Well, I think one of the biggest things is actually be prepared. We need to remember that a Zoom call is like people are actually seeing you, so you need to make sure you're as prepared as possible for the call, not necessarily looking at your notes, and you're actually ready for it. I think the other thing too is we need to make sure that we show people that we care. And so when you're on the Zoom call, I think it's perfectly okay to ask about the person's day, talk about, what's actually of interest and important to the folks on the other side of the Zoom, as opposed to going right into your agenda. And I think that's a big part of what's happening right now, is that we're in this world of we're doing Zooms and we're trying to do our part. But I think we also need to remember that people are feeling kind of unsettled. And so if we can, on the call, actually give them a bit of relief on every call that we do, and make them feel that there's, people on the other line that actually care about what they're going through or what they're doing, I think that really goes a long way. And it is, it's interesting what Chanel said. People do pay attention to your surroundings, and they're going to judge you on it. So, like, the fact that, and it's an opportunity for us to actually see how people live. So you really should pay attention to where you put your computer, because we can all see that. And so I think that's another part of being prepared, and just paying attention to where you're actually presenting yourself.
Absolutely. And, even I'll add to that point.
Today, because it's a TV screen behind me, and where I was sitting before we got on this call, I was like, the lighting's kind of off. So I need some tips from Chanel as well. But I do think that we need to pay closer attention to some of those details than we ever did before.
Absolutely. And I was going to add to your point, Natasha, of course, backgrounds are very important, but for some people don't necessarily feel comfortable having their home on view and within their Zoom screen. So virtual backgrounds are also a really great option. And you can access that through Zoom. There's free ones. If you just do a quick Google search and type Zoom backgrounds, you're able to just download that and add that into your Zoom, so that you don't have to have your background on display. Maybe you just don't feel comfortable with that. You don't have a nice space that you want to show on screen. So that's another option for you to consider as well.
Now, I've heard that in terms of Zoom etiquette, that turning your camera off is a big no-no. In fact, I've heard the comparison made that keeping your camera turned off during a meeting is like holding up a piece of cardboard in front of your face after you've been invited into someone's living room. Like, you have to get involved. You've been invited into someone's home essentially when you're on a Zoom call. So turning your camera off is a big no-no. Thoughts on that?
I don't know if I fully agree with that. I would say as the meeting organizer, it's up to you to say what those rules are. If you want people to be on camera, I think you should say that ahead of time. But we should also be considerate. I mean, we are living in a global pandemic. People have all different situations going on. And sometimes you just feel tired or depleted and you just can't be on screen. Or for example, in my case, I'm also a new mom. And so maybe at the time that I have to jump on a meeting, I also have to nurse my child or get them to sleep or whatever it is. So I think it's about being mindful of everybody's unique situation and saying that ahead of time. And if you know that you can't be on screen for any reason, hoping that you can actually go to whoever the meeting organizer is or letting your team know that you won't be on screen for a little while. I think as long as you're letting the person know, then that should be okay and that should be accepted.
Natasha, do you struggle with, looking in the direction of the camera as opposed to the people on the screen that you're talking to?
I do, because I find you get distracted because you see yourself on the camera. And so it's hard not to. I think everybody kind of does a little bit. But I try not to look at it. But you can often see people doing a Zoom call and they're like fixing their hair or something because you can't help but actually look at the screen. And I think that creates part of that distraction. That's why it is in some ways easier to do a phone call, especially if it's with under 2 or 3 people, because then you're actually able to just focus on what that call is as opposed to just being distracted by all the faces. And, I'm not quite sure why when you're in a meeting and you're in a boardroom, you could have a meeting with 10 people and you just don't feel that same sense. And I guess it's because you don't see yourself. You're just looking at the people around you and you're focused on them. So that could be it. And I think that contributes probably to the Zoom fatigue.
I want to switch gears and talk about what it means to occupy that space online. I know, for instance, whenever a new social media site crops up, there's always this mad dash for invitations and for getting a username, but I think people can usually tell that you're only using a platform out of obligation or because you suffer from fear of missing out. Chanel, I want to hear from you in terms of, when you were starting to put together your personal brand strategy online, how did you decide what your goals were and how did you decide what was worth your time and what wasn't? Or was it sort of like a learn as you go kind of process?
I'd say it's a bit of both, but really it's about thinking what your goals are. What are you actually trying to achieve? And also who's your audience? Who do you want to reach, right? So if you know who your audience is and what platforms they use, then that's probably where you want to focus most of your time. I like to not spread myself too thin, so I wouldn't say that I'm everywhere. I mean, I'm not on YouTube and I'm not on a few other platforms, but I try to go on the platforms that I know that I feel most comfortable and I know I'll actually be able to successfully reach my audience.
What about you, Natasha?
I think a big thing for me, and I do this exercise called the 5 I Ams, and I actually do it every year and really focus on what are the 5 things that are important to me about me right now. And it's grounded in values. And so I will often sort of look at what are those things and then make sure from a social media perspective that I'm demonstrating them and living them so that I'm being able to project my most authentic self all the time. And it really helps. I mean, some of your 5 I Ams will be consistent. I mean, one of mine is always like, I am authentic. And I look at that and I think, if I'm posting something, is it really authentic to who I am? Or am I getting caught up in the noise of what's happening in the world right now? And I'm posting it because I feel like I should, as opposed to because it's really part of who I am. And so it keeps me in check. And I think it's an exercise that we should do on a regular basis. Where you really are able to hone in on what matters to you the most, especially, right now in your life.
So even if your reasons for being online are primarily career driven, do you think there should always be some crossover between professional and personal? I know, Natasha, you have a couple of Instagram accounts, one of which is purely dedicated to the love story of your relationship, which is wonderful. Tell me a little bit about the rationale behind that.
I mean, I just started that, so there's not a huge rationale behind it other than I wanted to be able to journal our memories and our moments. It took me a long time to find, the man of truly of my life, my partner. And so I wanted to put something out there that was more of a journal of our special moments, and I didn't necessarily want to integrate all of that into my other account. But I'm a big believer in work-life integration. So I truly believe that who I am in my personal life is absolutely who I am in my business life. And people will often say that when they meet me, they're like, "Oh, you're exactly what I expected you to be." And that I take that as a huge compliment, because I am the same regardless, whether you have a personal relationship with me or whether you have a business and professional relationship with me. So the personal account that I started, honestly, it was just, we came back from a trip from Paris and we had all these really great photos, and I was like, I just want to post about them. And so I did. And I know that a lot of people that follow Natasha and KPR business and personal account anyway, were interested in that. So I had a bit of a crossover.
I want to hear more about that, that very important element of authenticity in both our virtual professional lives and our virtual personal lives. And of course, Chanel, I want to hear your perspective on that as well. We're just about to go to break, but more on that when we come back. Don't go away.
Everybody, it's Jennifer Clark. Join me here every Tuesday at 1 o'clock for Gen Zen TV, where I answer your questions, one caller at a time, putting the soul back into solutions. Join me here Tuesdays at 1 on Rogers TV.
You know what?
Operation Smile, alongside our medical volunteers, provides safe cleft surgery to children free of charge, thanks to generous donors like you. That was until we fell into a pandemic.
If you only knew what I'm going.
By December, tens of thousands more children will be waiting for surgery. Please help us keep our promise and deliver smiles to children in need when surgeries resume.
After a night out with your friends, not having a plan for a safe ride home can leave you in a bad spot. You could end up riding in a police car, an ambulance, or a hearse. These unplanned modes of transportation can be a costly choice and do not take you home. Your plan could include a designated driver, a taxi, or public transit. Drink responsibly, choose your ride, and have a plan for a safe ride home.
Visit arrivealive.org to find out more.
Are you a woman experiencing abuse? Do you know a woman experiencing abuse? Help is available any time of day or night. Sheltersafe.ca is an online map that helps you find a women's shelter or transition house that meets your needs so you can live a life free from violence. Sheltersafe.ca. Help is just a click away.
Join us as we look back at previous investiture ceremonies honoring great Canadians. Watch the Order of Canada exclusively on Rogers TV.
Welcome back to Ottawa Experts. I'm your host, Barbara Balfour. Social media can often feel like an after-hours bar that you just have to go to. And once you're there, it's fun enough, and maybe there are some people you like, but then you realize you probably could have just stayed home. The thing about social media is that it's a goldmine of professional opportunities because so many people are active on it. But by the same token, how do you stay authentic? How can you seek out connections who are also authentic? Here in the studio joining us tonight are special guests Chanel McFarlane and Natasha Kaufman, who will be teaching you how to put your best self online in this crazy COVID-19 world. Chanel, let's start with you. We talked a little bit before we went on the break about the importance of authenticity. And I'd like to hear your thoughts about, how you put your best online, both professionally and personally, while still staying true to yourself and your values. And I'd also like to hear on how you seek like-minded people online as well.
Well, I think it's all about sharing what you enjoy and sharing what you like. right? People connect with people. And so not feeling afraid to share that book that you read that you really enjoyed, or that Netflix show that you just binged and you just can't stop talking about. Share those things, because that's what makes you you. And that's how you'll be able to connect with people that have those same interests. And I think even from a job seeker perspective, people want to get to know you and your personality, right? They don't want to just, yes, the professional side is great, but the personal side is really what makes you you. And so that's what people want to get to know. And so that you shouldn't feel afraid to share those things when you can.
Do you think that the people you meet online are your real friends, or can be your real friends? Like, do you think that relationships that you make and foster online are as important as those in real life? Do you think that, I guess, the myth, misconception that there's a hierarchy, do you think there's some truth to that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I have some really incredible friends that I've met on platforms like LinkedIn and Twitter, and I very much consider them to be friends. So I'd say it just comes from trying to be your most authentic self, sharing the things that are really passionate about you, things that you really enjoy. But I think also just sharing the failures, sharing the things that are not so great. And I know from my perspective, when I started sharing the things I was experiencing in my career, failures that I had. I mean, one time I hosted an event and no one showed up, and that was pretty embarrassing. And I decided to write about that. And it was amazing to see the people that started sending me emails and DMs and started connecting with me and saying, wow, I've been through that too, and I never was able to talk about it. And so it was really nice to just almost bond over this shared common experience. And so really that's how you can make friends online. It's interesting, but from sharing those failures and sharing those things that are maybe a little embarrassing, that's how you start to make the deepest connections.
It seems like there's a lot of rewards for making yourself vulnerable, but of course there's sort of the right time and the right place. And Natasha, when you gave your TED Talk on the importance of showing up, you must have received a lot of positive feedback on that, because you made yourself vulnerable and talked about some of the experiences that shaped and formed you. I'd love to hear more about that, but I'm also interested in the fact that you brought up the importance of reciprocity and sort of showing up for others as those who have shown up for you. And I think that's an element that is often lost sight of in our society. And I think that's why many people get so exhausted when they network, because there's this element of everyone milling about trying to see what it is that other people can do for them versus what they can do for other people. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we need to remember that it is our responsibility to give back to others. I always have said this, that we are put on this earth to make it a better place, and to certainly leave it better than when we came into it. So I think that that's our purpose. And, part of the reason that TED Talk was so important for me, and I always said that I didn't want to do a TED Talk unless I felt that there was something that I could really say that would be impactful in some way. And I think the power of showing up is imperative. Because one of the things that I talked about in my TED Talk was a woman that I had my son really young. I was 18 when I had him. And I remember being a kid with a kid, not fully certain. I couldn't fully envision the person that I was going to become. And I met this woman who was a mother. She was a single mother, and she was super successful and had raised her daughter successfully. And so I could see her and I could envision myself in her. And so she didn't even realize she was showing up for me, but by her living her life in the most, positive way, gave me sort of a vision and a path of I could become this too. And so I think what we need to remember is that we have the opportunity and the ability to live our best lives and be our best selves, and not just for ourselves, but for those around us. And so being authentic and being kind and being good humans is really important. And, we say this a lot right now during COVID, we're in this together. And I believe that to be true. Then let's also remember that it's our responsibility to make sure that we are truly contributing to the world and doing good. And that's supporting our local communities as much as possible.
And I love everything that you're saying, Natasha, and I loved your example earlier, Chanel, about sharing your experiences online and how it brought all these supporters out from the woodwork. But at the same time, and I don't want to come across as too pessimistic, but I think we can all agree that the internet is not always a loving or forgiving place. And so I think it's really that we protect ourselves. So how do you know when to be vulnerable and when to hold something back? How much is too much? What are some safeguards that you put in place? And especially as a woman in this world that, knows no geographical boundaries anymore. What are your thoughts on this, Chanel?
Absolutely. I mean, well, definitely I'd have to bring up safety, right? You don't want to put out information that would compromise your safety in any way. So that's first and foremost. But in terms of knowing how much is too much, I mean, I think you feel that. You start to feel what you feel comfortable sharing. And so if you feel uncomfortable with that, then don't put that out there. That said, if there's a story that you feel like will really resonate with other people, that's really what you want to put forward, and see what comes of that.
Natasha, any thoughts on that?
I mean, I would agree. I think you really need to trust your gut instinct. Your gut really does tell you and helps guide you to, should I post this? Should I not post this? If it doesn't quite feel right, don't post it. And I think that goes back to authenticity as well. Are you posting for attention, or are you posting because it's really important for you to be able to share what you're about to share? And there's a difference, right? Because you should be posting not for the likes and not even for the comments. You should be posting because it's an opportunity for you to maybe express your vulnerability, and that feels important to you. So really do a gut check on the reason why you're sharing, or even oversharing for that matter. Because, it has to, I feel like with every post, it has to contribute in a positive way to others. Whether you're sharing, your love story or your entrepreneurial journey, or, whatever that is, it should contribute in a positive way somehow. And so, and if it doesn't, then you kind of have to look at, why are you posting it? And if you're just doing it for yourself, then that's fine too. But just do a gut check.
Absolutely. And I'll even add to that, Natasha. I think the internet has a really long memory, right? And so when you're thinking about posting something, how will you feel if it's online in 5, 10, 15 years? Think about all those things before you put it online. You want to ensure that everything that you have online is a positive reflection of you, because people are going to search you up. That's going to come up, and you want to ensure that it's something that's positive and not negative.
All those MySpace pictures coming to haunt you. I mean, who remembers MySpace? Both of you have mentioned the importance of doing a Google audit on yourself, like setting up a Google alert. Natasha, I see you nodding your head. Is this something that you advise your clients to do?
Well, I absolutely do, because you can't keep track of everywhere you're potentially mentioned. And so if you do set up at least your Google alerts, then you know when you are mentioned potentially. I do think it's really important. I also think that people should Google themselves and just see what pops up, because there are things that pop up from so many years ago, and it actually makes you really mindful of what you're saying. And then there needs to be that consistency and authenticity. And if it's not there, then I go back to the 5 I ams, and people should do that exercise, because it really grounds you in your values and what matters to you and what is most important to you. And then that way, at least there's some consistency in either any interviews that you're doing or what you post online. And that way you're not a walking, talking contradiction.
I'd like to talk more about that I am exercise, and also, Chanel, I wanted to chat more about how you can go about networking virtually, especially if it doesn't come naturally to you. I know there's some tricks that you've got up your sleeve to share with our audience. We're just about to go to break, so when we come back, we'll talk about all of that and lots more. Don't go away.
Should never have agreed to this last race. She's too old. Eddie!
Johnson, Halyard, Mac! Get to it, Mac!
Appears there's some kind of difficulty.
Seems to be something loose up there, I believe. Our topsails foul!
Can't see a man.
Hurry!
The
Just once more, little girl, and you can rest.
Her last race and still undefeated, the Blue Nose out of Lunenburg, Nova Scotia was fastest in the world for almost 20 years.
When I get up in the morning, the first thing I do is put on my yarn.
Jaylen's been able to have the prosthetics and have the support that she needs because of the people who donate to the war amps.
My arm helps me to pick flowers.
She can do things on her own. She doesn't need someone else to do it for her.
I love all the pretty colors of flowers, but yellow's my favorite color.
Hi, I'm Harriet Clooney, chef here in Ottawa and host of Scrap Cookings. Join me each week and I will show you how to reduce your food waste and save a bit of money. Hope to see you soon.
Hi, welcome back to Ottawa Experts. I'm your host, Barbara Balfour, and on tonight's show, we're talking about how to put your best self online with very special guests, Chanel McFarland and Natasha Kaufman. Now, ladies, before we went to break, we talked a little bit about the importance of authenticity and how to network online in a way that feels genuine and meaningful. I know, Chanel, that you've got a great blog post up about this, so you've obviously got a few tricks up your sleeve to share with the audience. Talk to us a little bit about how you can, first of all, ease your nerves before a virtual networking event, but even more importantly, how you can make the most out of it. How would you approach someone? How would you follow up with someone? And how would you basically get what you're looking for without turning them off?
Absolutely. Well, first, before networking, if you're feeling a little nervous, I always say to practice, right? So practice with your laptop. You can record yourself, introducing yourself, having a conversation. Just get used to how your body language comes across on screen. Of course, how your background and everything else appears on screen. That's a really great way to start feeling comfortable. And then when it comes to just having those conversations, you can start thinking about what are some conversation starters, right? What are some things that you can say to introduce yourself, sort of break the ice, similar thing that you would have done, in a pre-COVID world when you'd go to a networking event and go up to someone. What are some things that you can say to sort of ease into that conversation and have sort of an organic and authentic conversation? After that, the follow-up is so important. I say the art of the follow-up is really key to making a really great impression. And so I actually like, when I can, to send a physical thank you note because it goes a long way. So if I am able to have someone's address, I love just writing out a quick note and popping that in the mail. I mean, I know I'm not the only one these days that loves getting mail more than before. It's super exciting. But it also just shows the person that your interaction meant a lot to them. And so you want to show them that, they mean a lot to you. Here's a thank you note. And that just goes a long way in making a really great impression.
What I've been really struck by in this sort of new super digital age is that sometimes old school really is the best school, and the best way to really stand out is, like you say, Chanel, to send those handwritten thank you notes, even to pick up the phone and make a call, old-fashioned snail mail. Natasha, I'd love to hear your perspective on this. You're a very busy, very successful woman. I'm sure you have people approaching you all the time with all kinds of requests. What are some of the requests that make you more inclined to say, yes, I'll do it? And what are some of the requests that kind of turn you off?
Well, I think if someone has done their research on me and engages in a really thoughtful manner, I'm always happy to reciprocate. I think sometimes when I get those emails where I might get an email in the morning and they'll say, hey, I just really want to connect with you. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow? And that just, to me, shows that they're not taking, and believe it or not, I get a lot of those. And it's just not, or doing a call the next day. They're just not taking into consideration that If you look at my schedule, like I might not be able to even have my own coffee for the next 10 days because I'm like starting my day at 8 o'clock in the morning and go right until 7. So so I think that the key is being really thoughtful and mindful of that person's like life and circumstance. And I know that when I reach out to people, I'm always mindful of that. I remember years ago when I was just starting out in our industry, I would always read the newspaper and the magazines, and I would send a note to a journalist if I liked an article, not because I necessarily needed to pitch them on anything, but I just wanted to acknowledge their effort and what they are doing. And so that has, stayed with me all these years. And I just think if I'm reaching out to someone, I want to make sure that I'm acknowledging something really great that they've done or that they are currently doing, or make sure that I've done my research on them. And also want to be really mindful of their time. Time is our biggest commodity. That's all we have. So if we're spending it with someone, you want to make sure you're spending it with someone that actually appreciates the fact that you've dedicated the time, to them.
Absolutely. And Chanel, you mentioned the importance of following up. When is too soon? What follow-ups would you do? Talk us a little bit through some of the logistics of that, and do you have any examples of sort of an online relationship that you were able to spark through a virtual networking session where some sort of partnership was sparked?
Absolutely. Well, in terms of the follow-up, in a pre-COVID world, I'd probably say a few days. But I mean, now people have so much going on. You don't know what they have on their plate. And so I would say giving at least a week of a follow-up, especially if it's just really not urgent, before you're following up and just seeing if you'll be able to get a response from them. But yes, I've been able to spark some really great relationships online, from friendships to partnerships. Even my husband, I met online. And so it's definitely a place where I feel familiar connecting with people. And again, I would just say there, when it comes to foster relationships, you do want to lead with being personal and being specific, as Natasha was talking about. And I think even one thing I would say is even addressing the person and spelling their name correctly. That's the one I would say pet peeve of mine is if someone spells my name incorrectly. I'm like, well, you haven't really spent the time to add in that detail. So I think that definitely goes a long way in making a good impression. And also just making your note short and sweet. Nobody necessarily wants to take the time to read a really long email or essay. So being concise in your message, being specific, and also just showcasing what's in it for them, especially if you're trying to initiate some sort of partnership. When that person's reading your email, they want to know, well, what's in it for them? So if you can start thinking about that and frame that into your message, it's more likely to be well received and you'll get the response that you desire.
So many people lose sight of that. They lose sight of the importance of answering the question from the reader or the audience, why should I care? And so that's a really great point to make. Now, before we went to break in the previous segment, we touched a little bit on safety, especially as a woman, and when to allow yourself to be vulnerable online and so on. And both of you brought up really great points in terms of the fact that many of us are meeting our colleagues, our clients, even our romantic partners online. And when you don't necessarily have the opportunity to meet each other face to face, you may not necessarily have the opportunity for your gut to kick in or that sort of spidey senses feeling to cut in. It's just not the same, I find, for me, online versus face to face. And Chanel, you have something interesting on your blog again on how to do that virtual background check on a potential employer or client. Talk us through some of the steps we need to make sure that whoever we're dealing with online is actually legit. Because although we've opened up a whole new world to ourselves, there's also the massive potential fraud that goes along with it.
Absolutely. Well, we are seeing a lot of fraud happening right now during COVID-19. Of course, people just want to take advantage of people, unfortunately. And so there's a number of things that you can do to actually do a background check. So whether it's just for a person or for an employer, to ensure that they're actually someone that's legitimate. So as we were talking about before, I think a Google search is really important. Doing a simple Google search, seeing what exists, going through current news, seeing what things have been said, any news articles, and then reaching out to your network. See if there's anybody that knows that person or knows that company, has had a previous interaction with them. Getting as much information as you can ahead of time, that will allow you to avoid any sort of negative situations there.
You know what I think is amazing is how much time we tend to put into researching a new restaurant or a hotel or a vacation place versus the people that we allow into our innermost circle. Natasha, I saw you nodding your head earlier. Did you have something to add to that?
No, I mean, I totally agree. I think that we need to do the proper research, and it's available to us. And you're 100% right. Like, we do the research when we're researching a restaurant to make sure that, it's on the top 10 list. So why aren't we doing the same thing, perhaps with humans or with businesses? So, or some of our professional relationships. So I totally agree. I just think that sometimes you do have to take things with a grain of salt. And I do believe your gut instinct really doesn't let you down. And whether it's a digital relationship or an in-person relationship, it's still there. And you kind of know, and you just have to follow it. I think sometimes if we don't follow it, it's because we're choosing not to, not because it isn't working. And so I strongly suggest that if your spidey senses are going off, then they're going off for a reason.
Great points. Now we have a few minutes left until the end of our segment tonight. Our time together has just flown right by. Chanel, I wanted to give you the chance to leave our audience with any parting tips, thoughts, or any upcoming projects that you're involved in that you'd like to highlight.
Absolutely. Well, I live for this stuff. I love talking about personal branding and careers. And so I have my blog, Do Well, Dress Well. I've been posting each week some really great blog posts on how you can navigate this pandemic with your career and your personal brand. So I encourage you to visit that and read those posts. I have some free guides as well that walks you through some of the tech and the tools that I walked you through in this segment on how to show up as your best self on your video calls. And of course, you can always connect with me. I'm always on social media. I love having conversations about careers and personal branding, navigating this pandemic. So I encourage you to reach out if you have any questions or you just want to say hi.
DoWellDressWell.com. It is a treasure trove of information. I hope that everyone who watches the show goes and checks out Chanel McFarlane's blog. Thank you so much. And finally, Natasha, did you have any parting tips or insights that you wanted to share with our viewers before the end of our show tonight?
Yeah. I mean, I think whether it's personal branding or corporate branding, I think you need to be thoughtful and mindful with what you're putting out there from a digital perspective. We do certainly do personal branding, but we do so much in the corporate space, making sure that we're aligning our clients' values and purpose to the content that's actually being put out there. So you can learn a bit more on www.nkpr.net, or you can certainly follow along at Natasha NKPR as well. And thank you.
Love everything that you've been saying. Thank you so much to you both for your time, for sharing your wisdom and your insight with our audiences at a time where it could not be more relevant. Thank you so much to you both for joining us tonight. And for those of you who are watching us from home, thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you again in the studio next week. Have a great night.